In a quiet village in Tyre, sorry if I butchered, I do apologise, but nestled in the high plateaus of Algeria, a young girl named Imane Khelif once sold bread in the streets to afford bus fare. Those buses took her to a small boxing gym, where she sparred not just with opponents, but with a world that never quite seemed ready for her. A story isn't just about sport. It's about poverty, patriarchy, identity, and now an international debate that's threatening to erase everything she's fought for. Imane grew up in the modest cinder block home on the outskirts of Tyre, and her father, Omar, welded metal in the oil industry, where her mother kept the home. Money was tight. Khelif hustled as a kid, selling bread, collecting scrap, anything to keep chasing her dream that she wasn't even sure she was allowed to have. In a region where women are expected to serve, not strike, sorry for the pun, she defied expectations. She played football with the boys, boxed in secret, and eventually gained support from a teacher who saw her potential. And her father initially disapproved of boxing for girls, but eventually he stood proudly with her in a corner. By 2022, she had become the first Algerian female boxer to reach a World Championship final, and in 2024, she stunned the world by winning Olympic gold at Roland Garros, defeating China's Yang Lu 5-0. Again, sorry for butchered your name. The girl who sold bread in the streets was now a UNICEF ambassador, a symbol of hope, not just for Algerian women, but for underdogs everywhere. But with her eyes came scrutiny, not for her technique, footwork, or power in the ring, but for her chromosomes. Last Friday, World Boxing announced a major shift: mandatory genetic sex testing for all male and female competitors. The policy, already in effect, requires athletes over 18 to undergo PCR tests to detect the presence of Y chromosome material. This move comes 9 months after Khelif's Olympic win, a victory some critics, under the guise of fairness, began to question, citing intense pressure from women's rights groups in the UK, whatever the fuck's it got to do with them, and in Netherlands, and were fearful of protests at the upcoming Eindhoven Box Cup, where World Boxing took action. They didn't name her outright, they didn't use feminine pronouns, but the message was clear. Imane Khelif would not be allowed to compete in the women's division unless she submitted to the test. But here's the thing, science doesn't work the way World Boxing seems to think it does. There's a category of conditions called DSDs, differences in sexual development. They affect around 1 in 4,500 to 5,500 people. Some people with DSDs have XY chromosomes, yet their bodies are resistant to testosterone, or their genitals are female appearing. They are men trying to cheat. These are people born this way, often without even knowing until puberty or adulthood. Now, chromosomes alone can't determine advantage. Even testosterone levels ain't a clear-cut answer. Plenty of cisgender women naturally have higher testosterone. Some DSD athletes, despite having XY chromosomes, gain no competitive edge because their bodies can't even use the hormone. And that's the scientific consensus, and that's why the AOC moved away from chromosome testing decades ago. But now World Boxing has revived it, not because the science changed, but because the politics did. The tragedy here isn't just that Imane Khelif has been banned from competition, or that her dreams of defending her Olympic title in 2028 are under threat. It's that she's been reduced to a chromosome test. Her years of sweat, sacrifice and sheer determination, now overshadowed by a single biological detail that, according to most medical experts, might not even matter. She isn't just a boxer, she's a symbol, a fighter who overcame poverty, gender expectations and cultural barriers. She's what women's sports should be about: resilience, excellence and joy. But to some, she's become a pawn in a debate she never asked to be in. So here's why I care. I've had the privilege of meeting some wonderful people in the trans community, so to speak. People who deal with this kind of bollocks every day. People who are constantly told they don't belong, who are misgendered, mocked or turned into a political talking point. When I see people, often they're screaming about protecting women's rights and safe spaces, going after a young woman from a conservative poor background who clawed her way to the top, I don't see protectors, I see hypocrites. I see transphobia hiding behind bureaucracy. They weren't there when she was collecting bottles to afford boxing gloves. They weren't there when she was ignored, dismissed, or made to feel like boxing wasn't for people like her. Now that she's winning, now they do care, don't they? Now they want to protect the sport. It's utter bollocks, isn't it? It's just transphobia plain and simple. Look, I know I'm just some thick northern lad with a dodgy accent and a small platform, and I'm not some influencer or expert or someone with a fancy words, but I know injustice when I see it. And if even one person, whether you're part of the trans community or not, or you've been even told you don't belong, and you hear this and feel seen, or whatever I've said may have resonated with you, then this video's been worth it then, hasn't it? Imane Khelif's story should inspire us, not because she fits someone's narrow definition of what a woman is, but because she doesn't give a toss about definitions. She just fights. She fights hard for herself, her family, and her country. And I suppose in a funny way, now she needs people like us to fight for her. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you're one of those people who ever questions someone's identity, maybe it's time to ask why. Is it really about fairness, or is it just about your fear? Anyway, thanks for watching if you got this far. And I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.